I want you to just picture the biggest, most nagging problem you're dealing with right now.
Could be anything.
Yeah, maybe it's your bank account, maybe it's a difficult boss, or, maybe it's just this low-level hum of anxiety you can't seem to shake.
Right.
Now, what if I told you that problem isn't actually a life problem? It's a math problem.
And we aren't talking about, complex calculus or anything here. We are talking about basic arithmetic.
Addition and subtraction.
Exactly.
That sounds almost insultingly simple, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But stick with us. The idea is that if you know exactly what to add to the equation of your life, and maybe more importantly, what to subtract,
then the problem doesn't just get solved. It evaporates. It just ceases to exist.
it is a bold claim. Maybe one of the boldest we've ever covered on a deep dive.
It is. But it's the central premise of the book we are unpacking today.
We are diving into James Allen's man, king of mind, body, and circumstance. Now, a lot of people know Allen from his greatest hit, As a Man Thinketh. That's a classic.
A huge classic.
But this text, published way back in 1911, it feels like the advanced course. It feels like he's taking the gloves off.
It really does. If As a Man Thinketh is the intro to the power of thought, this book is like the manual on how to govern it, and the title itself is so telling.
Man. King of mind, body, and circumstance.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to be a king? It sounds powerful. It sounds like you finally get to boss the world around and have everything go your way.
Well, and that's the trap, right? That is exactly where most people get it wrong, because what Allen is arguing here is that being a king isn't about sitting on a velvet throne.
Right, having people peel grapes for you.
Not at all. It's not about luxury. It's about absolute, almost terrifying responsibility.
So it's less king of the world and more manager of the mess.
Precisely. If you are the king of your internal kingdom, then everything that happens inside that kingdom, the rebellion, the poverty, the sickness, the confusion, that is all on you.
You're the monarch, but you're also the administrator.
Yeah.
You can't blame the neighboring kingdom.
So no blaming the weather, no blaming the economy.
And definitely no blaming your difficult boss for how you feel.
Exactly. Allen's argument is that we are not helpless victims of circumstance. We are the makers. Which, brings us right back to that math analogy.
Right.
Allen says it explicitly in the foreword. The problem of life is like a problem of addition or subtraction to a schoolboy.
When it's mastered, the difficulty just vanishes.
Vaughn.
Okay, let's unpack this properly. Because if I'm the king, I need to know the layout of my territory.
Yeah.
Allen divides this into the inner kingdom and the outer kingdom.
Yeah.
Let's start with the inner.
Right. The inner kingdom, the world of thought. And this is where Allen makes his most radical claim, and frankly, the one people struggle with the most.
Which is?
He says that happiness and misery are purely internal conditions. They aren't things that happen to you, they are things that happen in you.
I have the quote here, and it's a heavy one. He says, the cause of suffering is neither deity, nor devil, nor circumstance, but thought. But hold on, let's play devil's advocate here. If I get stuck in a massive traffic jam and I'm late for a flight, that's a circumstance. And I'm miserable.
Yeah.
How is that not the traffic's fault?
That is the perfect example. Allen would say the traffic is just a neutral fact. It's just cars on asphalt. But think about two different people in that same jam.
Okay.
Person A is gripping the steering wheel, blood pressure through the roof, screaming at the windshield, imagining being fired. They are in hell.
Okay, that sounds a little like me.
And then you have person B in the car next to them. They realize they can't change the traffic. So they put on a podcast, they lean back, they accept they might miss the flight, and start mentally planning the rebooking.
They're calm.
Totally calm. Same circumstance, two completely different realities.
So the misery wasn't in the traffic, it was in the reaction, in the thought.
Exactly. Allen describes every person as living in a sphere of their own thoughts. He says the world around us is literally tinged with the color of our thoughts.
So if you're walking around in a sphere of angry, resentful thoughts, the whole world looks hostile.
You literally perceive a different reality than the calm person next to you.
I loved the specific image he uses for this, the carapace.
The shell.
Yeah, like a crab shell or a turtle shell.
Yes, the carapace of selfish thought. It's such a brilliant metaphor because a shell feels like protection, doesn't it?
Sure.
We build up these defensive thoughts, cynicism, judgment, to protect ourselves. But Allen argues that while it protects you, it also suffocates you. It stops you from growing. He says you have to break that shell to breathe the air of a more expansive life.
That's a terrifying image, actually. walking around inside a bubble that you painted black and then complaining that the sun has gone out.
This is exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
And if the inner kingdom is the cause, then the outer kingdom, the world of things, events, other people, that must be the effect.
The mirror effect.
Yes. Alan calls the outer world the other half of the inner world. He uses this analogy of a warped mirror.
Right.
If you look into a warped mirror, you see a distorted face. You don't try to fix the reflection by scrubbing the glass.
You fix your face. You fix the object being reflected, meaning you fix your mind.
Right. A disturbed mind gives you a distorted view of the world. If you subdue the mind, organize it, tranquilize it, suddenly the universe looks different.
But wait, here's where it got really interesting for me. It's one thing to say, my view of the world changes. But Alan seems to go a step further. He talks about how we interact with others, the body politic.
Yes.
And this part felt a little, I don't know, almost mystical. He says if a person acts wrongly, humanity expels them.
It sounds mystical, but think about it sociologically. He compares humanity to a physical body. If you have a toxic, morbid atom in your body, your immune system tries to expel it to protect the whole.
Right.
Alan is just observing that society functions in a similar way.
But how does that actually happen? It's not like society has an immune system.
Doesn't it? I mean, think about a person who is constantly dishonest or abrasive or just selfish. What happens to them?
Well, people stop calling.
Exactly. Friends stop calling. Colleagues stop trusting them. Contracts don't get renewed. They are slowly but surely pushed to the margins. It's not magic. It's social friction.
So when Alan talks about the book of life where every deed is recorded,
He's really just talking about cause and effect. He mentions a fable about this book, but he's using it to illustrate that nothing is hidden. The injury we think we receive from others is often just the rebound of our own actions.
like punching a wall,
You can't blame the wall if your hand hurts.
that is a tough pill to swallow. It basically means if you feel like the world is constantly rejecting you, or you feel like you're surrounded by jerks.
You might need to check your own frequency. It's tough, yes, but it's also empowering. Because Alan clarifies a huge distinction here. You cannot alter external things to suit your whims. He calls it the wall of circumstance.
Which sounds incredibly depressing. The wall of circumstance. Like, I can't just wish for $1 million or wish for the wall to disappear.
You can't. And if you try to break down that wall with your head, you'll just get a headache. But, and this is the key, this is the solution, you can alter your attitude toward the wall.
And when your attitude changes?
The aspect of the external thing changes.
How so? A wall is still a wall.
Well, to a prisoner, a wall is a cage. To a soldier defending a city, a wall is a shield.
To a climber, a wall is a challenge.
Right. The object didn't change, but your relationship to it did. Alan says when you align with the circumstance, you find the gate.
That leads perfectly into the mechanics of how we actually change that attitude. Because it's easy to say change your mind. But in practice, we are creatures of habit. I do the same things every day, think the same thoughts.
And Alan acknowledges that. He deals heavily with what he calls the law of habit. He introduces this fascinating paradox. Man is a being of habit, yet he is free.
How does that work? I mean, if I'm running on autopilot, how am I free?
He uses the analogy of gravity. Think about it. We don't try to change the law of gravity. We don't jump off cliffs and hope we float just because we believe in floating.
No, we respect the law. We build stairs, we build elevators.
Exactly. We use the law to rise. Alan says habit is a law just like gravity. You cannot alter the fact that repetition builds habit. That is the mechanism. But, and here's the freedom, you get to choose which habits you submit to.
You can't stop the machine, but you can choose what you feed it.
Perfect.
Reiterated thoughts, that's the phrase he uses.
Yes. Habit is just reiterated thoughts and deeds. He makes a really important point here that kind of counters the idea of being born this way. He says a man isn't born good or bad arbitrarily. Character is the product of accumulated choices.
So, if I have a bad temper, it's not just how I am, it's not in my DNA, it's a habit I've built by getting angry 1,000 times before.
Precisely. It's an accumulation. You built that wall brick by brick. And the process of change is simply reversing that engine. To change the man, you must change the thought. If you persist in good thoughts, eventually good actions become automatic.
They become unconscious. I love that. It takes the mystery out of self-improvement. It's just repetition.
Right.
But let's pivot to something that really made me pause. The body. Alan talks about health in a way that, well, I have to play devil's advocate again here.
Let me guess. The food fear section.
Yes. He tells this story of a vegetarian who is terrified of eating potatoes or apples because he thinks they're poisonous. But frankly, this was written in 1911. We know a lot more about biology now.
Sure.
Is Alan seriously suggesting that if I eat arsenic but think robust thoughts, I'm going to be fine? Because that sounds really dangerous.
No, and I'm glad you pushed back on that. He isn't ignoring biology. He isn't saying poison isn't poison. He's talking about the extra layer of suffering we add through obsession and anxiety. Think about that food fear guy. He isn't sick because the potatoes are actually toxic. He's sick because his body is flooded with stress hormones every time he sits down to dinner.
Right, it's the nocebo effect. He expects to get sick, so he stresses his body until it actually gets sick.
Exactly. Alan calls it a sickly mind. He says a sickly mind is more deplorable than a disordered body.
The stomach ache is one thing.
That's a physical fact. But if you spend 3 days worrying that the stomach ache is a terminal illness, or that you're being punished, or that you're too weak to handle it, that is the sickly mind taking a minor physical event and turning it into a catastrophe.
So the cure he talks about isn't magic. It's about removing the mental interference so the body can do what it's designed to do.
Precisely. He suggests ignoring the body, not in a negligent way. Don't stop washing or eating, but stop monitoring it for failure. He says men of robust minds work as if the body were not disordered. They don't let an aching joint dictate their mood. And often, because the stress is removed, the body actually heals faster.
It's about hierarchy. Who is in charge? The aching joint or the king?
That's the core of it.
Speaking of being in charge, let's talk about the other big stressor. Money, poverty, and wealth. This is usually where people get defensive, and honestly, rightly so.
Of course.
If I lose my job because of a recession, that's not my mental condition, is it? I mean, that's economics. That's a global event.
That is a fair critique. But Alan is looking at poverty and wealth through a very specific lens. He would argue that the recession is the circumstance, the traffic jam again, but your state of poverty is how you inhabit that circumstance.
Explain that distinction, because, $0 in the bank feels pretty objectively poor.
Alan defines poverty as a state of disorder. He asks, is there dirt in your life? Is there laziness? Is there confusion? He contrasts this with a miser who might be a millionaire. The miser has money, but he lives in fear, he hoards, his soul is shriveled. Alan says that man is poor.
And the flip side, the person with no money.
If a person has very little money, but their home is spotless, they are generous with what they have, and they are disciplined. Alan says that person is merely passing through a lack of funds. He views the bank balance as a lagging indicator.
A lagging indicator. That's a great way to put it.
If your internal kingdom is rich in order and discipline, the external kingdom eventually has to catch up. He says, put the mind in order and the house and life will follow.
He believes you can't permanently rise above poverty if your internal kingdom is a mess of anarchy.
Right. You might win the lottery, but if your mind is poor, you'll just lose it all.
But what about the obstacles themselves? Alan calls them drawbacks. Lack of money, lack of time, lack of connections.
He reframes them completely. He says these are not hindrances, they are spurs.
Spurs. Like on a cowboy boot.
Yes. Something that kicks the horse into action. Necessity gives birth to invention. If you had everything handed to you, you wouldn't develop the strength to acquire it yourself.
So the real want isn't the want of money.
It's the want of the right mental attitude. If you view a lack of funds as a tragedy, it crushes you. If you view it as a puzzle to be solved, it sharpens you.
This connects back to everything we've discussed. It is all about the internal framing. Which brings us to the final, and maybe the deepest part of the book, spiritual dominion.
This is the metaphysical core, and Alan makes a very specific distinction here that I think is crucial for the listener to grasp.
Okay.
Most people say, I have a soul, like it's a possession, something you carry around in your pocket or that floats inside your ribcage.
Right. I have a body and I have a soul. That's the standard view.
Alan says, no. You are soul. Man is soul, mind is man. There is no separation.
What does that change? Why does that grammatical shift matter so much?
Because if you have a soul, you can blame things on your body or your brain or your circumstances as if they're separate from the real you.
My body is weak or my circumstances are bad.
Exactly. But if you are the soul, if you are the thinker and the doer, then there is no separation. You can't blame a deity. You can't blame a devil. You are the absolute monarch.
It sounds like he's trying to wake us up from being sleepwalkers, like he's shaking us by the shoulders.
He uses incredibly strong language. He talks about moving from being a pooling beggar and a whipped serf in your own mind
to ascending the spiritual throne. A whipped serf. That's a brutal image. being a slave in your own head.
It is being enslaved by your own appetites, your own passions, your own fears. If you let your anger rule you, you are a serf to your anger.
And so salvation isn't some outside force.
No, Allen defines salvation not as some theological rescue operation. He defines it as deliverance from one kind of thought by the substitution of another.
It's the math again. Subtraction of the bad thought, addition of the good thought.
It always comes back to the math. He says the kingdom isn't a place you go when you die. It is here. It is the mental forces, your appetites, your passions, your desires.
If they rule you, you are a serf.
If you rule them, you are the king.
So what does this all mean for us right now? We've covered the inner and outer kingdoms, the mirror, habit, health, money, the soul. It feels like Allen is stripping away every single excuse we've ever made.
He is, and that's why this book is so confronting. It's not a comforting pat on the back, it's a challenge. If we summarize Allen's mathematical certainty, it's this. Life is the sum total of our thoughts. We are the makers.
It's empowering, but honestly, it's also a little scary. It means if my life is a mess, I made the mess.
It should be scary. Total responsibility is heavy, but look at the practical application. You cannot stop the weather. It will rain.
But you determine your attitude toward the rain.
You cannot stop the actions of other people. They might be rude, they might be unfair, but you determine your reaction. You determine if that morbid atom infects you or if you repel it.
It's about shifting from being a thermometer, just reflecting the temperature around you, to being a thermostat.
Where you set the temperature yourself. That's a perfect analogy. Allen wants us to set the temperature of our own existence.
The crown is yours, but so is the responsibility.
That's it.
And that is a fascinating place to leave it. We started by asking who wouldn't want to be a king. And I think we've realized that being a king is actually the hardest job there is.
It is. It's the work of a lifetime.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. If James Allen is right, if you are the absolute monarch of your own mind, take a look around your internal kingdom right now. Are you ruling with wisdom and order?
Or is your internal kingdom in a state of anarchy and civil war? Is the king on the throne, or is he hiding in the basement while the passions run the castle?
The crown is yours. Wear it well. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.